You're one of the stars of The Brother's Son, and one of the major themes within this series is the power of choice. And throughout the show, we find Bruce
Um,
discovering his voice. And you brought so much nuance and depth to that. As an actor, how did you create this space for yourself to dive into that emotional arc?
well, I think there's a lot in the story that I could personally hold on to. I mean, this entire theme of the brother's son is tradition versus, new wave freedom, right? The new age of thinking. I think there's a lot of traditionalism in our culture, in
Mm,
Asian culture in general, but also within Bruce's struggles is the ideals of American freedom, right, and independence. And I think it's really those two things clashing, right? So in a lot of ways, I feel like Bruce is struggling between that, and I myself as Sam struggle between that growing up. My parents
mm.
wanted me to pursue certain things, and I was very stubborn about the things that I wanted, and it just so happens to have worked out. But I can totally see the frustration on both ends, and I think so much of the story works when you see these characters struggling to fight over what they want.
When you're playing a character where you're able to draw so many similarities from, is that more or less challenging for you as an actor?
That's an interesting question. I think there's a few different ways to answer it, but I think for me as an actor, I always have to use myself as a vessel because
Yeah.
all I have is myself. So I think that so much of Bruce and every single character I'll ever play for the rest of my life will have a lot of elements of me, qualities of me. But I do think that depending on the characters, the story, it's always going to be some heightened version of me. And I think with Bruce, I really leaned to a heightened version of me that really stood out for me with Bruce. I think Bruce is very afraid of a lot of things. A lot of crazy turbulent times are happening in his life, and he's trying to be as brave as possible because he wants to be a cool guy. But I think he also is someone with a lot of insecurities, and I think I sort of drew that from my own insecurities, but just heightened it to a point that I think matched what I thought was right for Bruce.
Mm, you definitely did that. In addition to the incredible work that you've done on screen, you've also written, produced, directed, and edited. How have your experiences behind the camera impacted the way that you approach your work on screen and interpret characters like Bruce and scripts like The Brother's Son?
Well, the awesome thing about writing and directing and producing your own is that you're taking control over what you're putting out, and so you get a lot of instantaneous feedback. You can watch something, and if you're going to edit it and put it out, you have to kind of know the performance right away. I think that was very different from on set where you have one, less time, but two, you don't necessarily get the chance to have that instantaneous feedback. So I do think it's more of a leap of faith on set, but I think it being on the other end of it helps you communicate with decision makers what to look for. So I felt like I really understood where our showrunners and our directors were coming from. They had some amazing feedback for the show, amazing feedback for scenes, for how things are supposed to play. And honestly, the show wouldn't be where it is without them. I mean, they did so much to make everything work. But I think that, being behind the camera really helped me sort of understand and expedite those conversations faster.
Perfect segue to this next question, but the creative team wanted each of you to bring your own interpretations to these characters. How did that trust allow you to take agency over Bruce's arc? And what's something that you brought to him that maybe wasn't initially on the page?
Yeah, I think that all kind of started during the audition process. I feel like, we all came in with choices, and if it works, it kind of works. And I think everybody who ended up being on the brother's son made some really bold, interesting choices that we knew would really work. And if you look at it, this show has so much fun, zany characters left and right. I mean, there are the contrast between the characters is one
Yeah.
of the most interesting things to me. There, not everyone is kind of living in the same world, and I think that's actually very reminiscent of life. If you really look at life, I mean, there is a wide range of people who live in the world we live in, who share the space, right? And so I really felt like that what stood out to me. And when I first saw the brother son, I think that that was how I interpreted the dynamic between Bruce and Charles, is that these are two people living in completely different worlds. And when the show comes, like in the pilot, these worlds sort of collide. And I think that's the beauty of where I see the conflict and the interesting premise of the brother son. Now, when it comes to choices that I feel like I brought on as Bruce, I think improv is a huge, huge part of Bruce's character. And it's funny because I actually feel like we toned down some of the things that I actually wanted to bring into Bruce more.
Mm.
Because here's the thing is, have you ever taken an improv class? Improv comedians are unhinged. They have to be, they're so unhinged in the best ways possible. They're so sharp, they're so funny. They are so not afraid to be themselves. They're so not afraid to commit to a bit is really what it is. And I feel like one of the elements that really stood out in general is just Bruce and how he sees improv, and he sees improv as a way of life. To him it's not just a hobby. This is his career path. He's really dedicated to it. And so he sort of has this demeanor that I feel like is larger than life at times.
Mm.
And I think that comes from, my experience in improv rooms, where I've met a lot of people who want to have dreams of wanting to be improv comedians, who wants to be on SNL, and they have this larger than life persona in so many different ways. And I think he's just more free and goofy, and he's very visceral in that sense. Yeah. So improv is huge. And also the in improv there's a big saying, a really important saying to improv, which is yes and, right?
Yeah.
And a really important phrase. And I think Bruce also kind of sees the world through a yes and lens. So he sort of goes with the flow with a lot of things that happen.
Yeah, great answer. And speaking of that contrast, in a series where everything is so high stakes, your character does bring so much levity, and it keeps it so refreshing for the series. How much fun is it for you as an actor to bring that humor, and how much of what made that final cut was scripted versus improvised?
A good amount was scripted. I would say the majority of it was scripted, but there was a lot of fun moments that we got to improvise. I think there was a bit where I'm in the car with Charles, and then I keep wanting to listen, and then, you know, boom, phone slap. All those little reactions, were sort of improvised on the day of. A lot of reactions. There was a lot of
Mm.
surprises that our directors and showrunners wanted to create for us, so that the scenes don't feel stale. And there was a scene where I get a gun pointed to my balls, and in the shot I didn't realize that was happening, and Kevin decided to our director decided to surprise me and told Ryu, the guy who was holding the gun, who was one of the henchmen, to do that in the scene. And you actually get my natural reaction. I freaked out because I was just living kind of in the moment,
Yeah.
and to feel it, like, I really felt like I kind of experienced a drop in my stomach the moment a gun was pointed at my balls.
Yeah, it brings that authenticity to the screen. There's also that emotional scene in episode 108 where Bruce and his mother are talking about sacrifices, choices, and the things that they wanted. It's such a standout throughout the series. How do you prepare
Yeah.
for a moment like that? And how did you feed off Michelle's performance to help elevate your own?
Michelle Yeoh makes every single actor in the show, but also I'm sure throughout her career as of late, better. She just makes all of us better. And I think she really
Mhm.
sets the tone and sets the standard. And Michelle has this incredible ability in this show to really feel the love of the family. I
Yeah.
think without her, I don't think we feel a certain chemistry. And there's a certain playfulness that kind of comes out. A lot of these nuances between, me and Charles, or Bruce and Charles, but me and Justin, when we kind of clash, I really feel like when Michelle's in the room, we have this competitive edge that comes out as well in the show. Like I think she just sucks us all into the scene. So I think she just heightens everything for us, and it's also
Mm.
Michelle. So we really want to just do our best work.
You're not giving yourself enough credit. You're also fantastic in this show. When you first told your mother that you wanted to pursue a career in the arts, she was really against the idea because opportunities for our community weren't as prevalent as they are now. What has it meant to you know that you're part of a community that's blazing a trail for young Asian creatives who may want to follow in your footsteps? And have you had time to reflect on your own contributions in this much needed step forward in this industry?
Thank you for asking that. I haven't actually. I don't think I've reflected yet. I'm sure I will at some point soon. But I want to say that first off, I want to pay homage to everything that came before us. If it wasn't for all of these historically groundbreaking projects that came before us, we would not be here. And so that is really important. And everybody who's been a part of an Asian project, or just, if you're an Asian who was in media, I have to thank them. I have to thank you, because truly, without their help, without their efforts, we would not have these opportunities. And I can only hope for that we do the same for upcoming generation, upcoming projects. I hope that people love the Brother Sun. The whole world loves the Brother Sun. They love what we're doing. They love to see Asian artists like ourselves performing and setting the bar high, right, for good performances, so that we have more and more projects like these being made. Because I really don't think we have enough of
Mm.
these. So let's see more. Let's have more stories. We're right now living in a world where people are hungry for content like this. There's so much of the same things we've been seeing over and over and over again. And I think anytime we get to see a fresh perspective like this, something new, I think people are hungry for that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll get back to you. And I can only hope that people are inspired to pursue the things that they can't, that they feel like society feels like they can't do, because that's very much what I felt like when I wanted to pursue acting. I was pursuing it at a time where I feel like I pursued acting at a time where it truly felt delusional to do it, because there was like no one who was pursuing acting at the time that was Asian. I think I wanted to start when I, like, in around 2013, 2014. And back then, I think the year after I decided to, like, tell my parents, like, come out with the with my desire to pursue a career in the performing arts, there was a study that came out from USC that, like, showed just how unlikely what I chose to do is. I felt like it was delusional at that time, and I just hope that it feels more realistic to this upcoming generation of young Asian artists. And I want to, if I have a message for them, I would say this is the golden age of cinema for Asian artists to be in entertainment, to be in cinema, to be in film and TV. Historically, if you look at just the history of Hollywood, of this country, and this entertainment industry that we all work in, there has never been a better time to do it historically. So I encourage them to jump in, because we can use their talents and uplift and create even new, fresh, interesting stories for the world to enjoy.
Beautifully said. And take time to reflect on your own contributions to that. I think there's something so powerful for audiences, also as industry leaders, to see a show like The Brother Sun remain in the top 10 on a streaming platform like Netflix. And that's a
Yeah.
testament to everything that this entire cast and the people behind the scenes have done. And this is the longest that you've lived with a character. Has anything surprised you about this overall experience thus far? What's been the biggest takeaway?
There's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot for me to process. This is crazy. I just went to the 626 night market, and
Yeah.
we had a giant we hosted a huge event where the whole entire 626 community, I felt like, showed up on Saturday. We had a sold out menu. 20,000 people were there, and so much of them were there to support our show, talk about our show. And the reception online has been incredible. I mean, it's a really highly rated show, and so yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for an entire interview, but it's good. I'll just keep it short and sweet. It's been really fun.
I got one final question for you. You know, the series has been so
Mhm.
incredibly well received. If we're lucky enough to get a second season, is there an aspect of Bruce that you would like to dive further into?
I mean, Bruce is a very complicated character. And I think he is a fish out of water in a completely different sense. I mean, if you think about it, his the way he sees the world is very different from everyone else, all the main characters and the society they've sort of gotten to know. Um, I think that there's a lot to be explored. I feel like this is actually a great question to check in with, our showrunners and our directors about. I don't know personally how much you know, I can um I can say about it because I don't want to, temper any expectations, but I will say Bruce is very, very interesting and he sees the world in a very interesting way. But I think there's a lot of potential. I think Bruce's story is one of becoming, and it's one of development,
Mm.
and there's a lot of potential for this character because he's also unhinged. Bruce is very unhinged in a lot of different ways. So we'll see.